This video is sponsored by Aries, where I'm continuing my 3K challenge series. If you need a better commission-free broker for stocks, options, crypto, and futures, join Aries now with a $500 deposit, and they'll give you an extra $100 bonus to get started. Use my link in the description, and we'll hook you up. Hey guys, just a heads up, if you're having a good day, I might ruin it for you. Because if you, like me, are an aspiring homeowner, then things are about to get a lot harder. We all had years and years to buy a house, but instead we waited and we saved, and it's about to do us absolutely no good. Throughout 2021, I saved up an additional $70,000 that I intended to use for a down payment on a house. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You work, you save, and you buy a house. But here's the frustrating part. Home ownership just got so much more expensive over just the last few months that I am now less able to afford a house now than I was 12 months ago when I had $70,000 less. I would have mathematically been better off buying a house last year with $0 down than I am this year with $70,000. And to really put that into perspective, I would have been better off even if I put $0 down 12 months ago and spent the last year dumping money into Terra. I would still be better off than I am now. Now me, I've got money, so I'm gonna buy a house this year regardless of the increased cost. But you've got a broad set of people out there who thought they were doing the right thing by saving up for a house this year, and now they've got another thing coming. Let me show you why. Let's look at my personal example. This is a stock photo of a house similar to the one that I've been renting in Virginia, and I might end up buying it now that my landlord has agreed. I'm not going to show you an actual picture of my house because the internet's a pretty nasty place and this would be dumb. But here are the actual real-world numbers on my house. Comparables in my area generally have the house placed between $580,000 and $620,000. Let's make it easy and say 600 grand. In my area of Northern Virginia, where you have white-collar jobs, good K-12 schools, and a low crime rate across a suburban sprawl, this is pretty average. Last year in the summer of 2021, interest rates on a mortgage were about 3%. If I were to use an FHA loan, which is what more than 50% of first-time homebuyers use, then I would have had to put down 3.5%, or about $21,000. This would make my loan $579,000. On a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, this would make the monthly payment $2,440 toward principal and interest. That's pretty cheap for my area. It's less than my rent. But let's not forget, there are costs associated with carrying a home that we have to factor in. Once you tack all of those on, the monthly payment goes up to over $3,500. If you own property, you're going to have to pay property tax. Taxes around here are pretty high, but there are places where they're even higher still. And if you want to live in the suburbs, chances are you're going to have to pay an HOA fee, that's the Homeowners Association. Essentially, it's another locality tax. And if you own a home, you need to insure it. So tack on that cost to your home ownership too. And since you don't put down 20% with a FHA loan, that means you need to pay PMI, that's private mortgage insurance, until you hit that level of equity. Now personally, I think PMI is an absolute racket, and I can rant about that later. Now me, I'm a veteran, so I don't have to pay PMI even if I put $0 down. That's one of the advantages of the VA loan. But most people, of course, don't have access to that kind of solution. And my quote for closing costs, about $10,000 cash up front. So in addition to having money saved up for a down payment, I also need to have another $10,000 cash set aside for the lawyers and for the bribes at City Hall. But here's the real key point here. Monthly payment a little above $3,500. Now keep in mind all of this was at the 3% interest rate from last year. Let's see what happens if we keep everything the same, but we raise the interest rate from 3% to 5.3%. Which is the new national average. The mortgage itself shoots up $800 and brings the monthly payment to about $4,300. That's an additional $9,600 a year for the exact same house going straight toward interest. That additional $70,000 I saved up is going to get absorbed by interest in less than a third of the loan's life. Over the life of this mortgage, I'll have paid about $580,000 in interest, which is almost the cost of the house. And by the time I'm done paying all the taxes and the fees, I'll have paid about $1.3 million for this house by amortization. Now let's compare these side by side. Here's the 3% interest from last year versus the 5.3% interest from this year. Everything else remains the same. Like I already mentioned, you're already shooting up your mortgage payment by $800 a month just for principal and interest. But we've also got an additional 2 years of PMI, so that's money going straight out the window for 2 more years instead of building equity. Over the life of the loan, we're going to pay an additional $270,000 in interest costs. That could have been going into our retirement accounts, but instead, it's going to the bank. But the number that really matters is right here, this additional $800 a month in payments. Now make no mistake, this isn't an extra $800 that's going straight toward your equity. This is an $800 that your bank is keeping because of the increased interest rates. The pool of buyers who can afford a house at 5.3% interest is a lot smaller than at 3% interest. When the cost of the loan itself goes up by 30%, you price a lot of prospective buyers out of the market. If I'm a prospective buyer and I ran my numbers and I figured out that I could afford a $600,000 house at 3% interest and $3,500 a month is affordable to me, then all of a sudden at 5.3% interest, I need to find a cheaper house. To get back within my $3,500 a month budget, I need to find a house for $440,000. Now, you might be able to bump that number up a little bit because the insurance and the tax should be a little bit lower on the cheaper house, but in any case, that's a really big bite. The people who were shopping for $600,000 houses are now looking at $440,000. The people like me who were shopping for $800,000 houses are now looking at $600,000. Now, on the other hand, what does this mean for people who want to sell? Well, first, get used to the idea that your house is going to sit on the market longer because the pool of prospective buyers at 5.3% just isn't nearly as large as it was a year ago. I feel like 1 year ago, houses were looked at as this liquid asset. If you want to get out of your house and cash out, you can do it within less than a day. And that's just not the case anymore. And next, be prepared to drop your prices. $800,000 houses aren't flying off the shelves like they were last year, with all contingencies waived, sight unseen, $40,000 over asking. That mad scramble of middle-class people FOMOing into property is going to disappear. In my neighborhood in Alexandria, Virginia, my neighbors seem married to this idea that our housing prices cannot drop. Now, it's true, we do have a good school system, there's low crime rate, there's not a lot of new construction going on around here. There are reasons why this property should stay valuable. But we are actively seeing houses sell for $65,000 less than they were just 3 months ago. That's what it means for housing prices to drop. Communities are not immune to this. This is also true in Charleston, South Carolina, where we were looking to buy a year ago. At the time, you wouldn't have time to see a house before it was sold. If there was a newly listed house and you wanted to drive to go see it, then on more than half of occasions, by the time you actually got there to see the house, it was already under contract with somebody who lives out of state, never saw the house in person, bought it for $50,000 over asking, all contingencies and inspections waived. Now, 12 months later, you've got good houses in desirable neighborhoods that are sitting on the market for weeks at a time and dropping their prices. According to the St. Louis Fed, house prices are still increasing. Slower than they used to, yet increasing nonetheless. But something funky is happening with these numbers. Perhaps the bubble hasn't popped yet in cities or rural areas, and that's what's skewing these numbers, I'm just guessing. Those of us with our ears to the ground can already tell that those suburban homes that have been shooting up in price, those are already plateauing and starting to come down. A little speculation here, I think the locations that are really going to feel this value cut are the new construction communities with $800,000 to $1 million houses. Now, people that already bought in last year are locked into their 3% interest rates. But for developers that are building and selling new houses, and for the people that have to sell their house because life happened and they need to move, I don't think they're getting those types of values anymore. There's still some built-up demand for houses like this, and there's people with big money that are moving from the north to the south, and they're going to be able to afford the higher costs. But the pool of buyers is smaller, and it's going to get much, much smaller still if interest rates continue rising. An $800,000 house at 3% interest will be $4,470 a month and $1.48 million over the life of the loan. Now at 5.3% interest, this will cost you $5,500 a month and $1.87 million over the life of the loan. In the nightmare scenario, if interest rates rise further to 7%, that would be $6,350 a month and $2.18 million over the life of the loan. You just don't get that same pool of buyers, and you don't get the FOMO that had people spending $40,000 asking and waiving all their contingencies. This is still a pretty hot market because we don't have enough new construction to offset demand completely. But the winds are starting to shift, all because of this affordability factor. And honestly, I really can't agree with what all the real estate agents and the rental arbitrage YouTubers are saying. They're trying to paint this rosy picture of the real estate market by saying that it will just cool. Housing prices won't drop, they'll just plateau. Or maybe they'll even continue rising in the near term, just at a slower pace. These vested and interested parties are acting like real estate has this God-given right to always appreciate. Now, disclaimer, I'm not a real estate guy. But I think that the real estate people are too close to the problem. They're missing the forest for the trees. And by telling themselves and everybody else that real estate isn't going to depreciate, I think they're deceiving themselves a little bit by acting like their asset class is immune to market forces. My and every other aspiring homeowner's challenge now will be to decide. Do we buy now and hope that this slightly cooler market presents an opportunity? Do we wait and hope that prices decrease further so as to facilitate more liquidity among buyers and sellers? But what if we wait too long and interest rates continue to rise? Now houses are even less affordable than they were before. At some point, it does come down to luck, because nobody in the world has the visibility to know how high will interest rates go versus how low will house prices get. I can run down a whole bunch of rabbit holes about comparing payments or talking about PMI and how it's such a bullshit racket, how people can use the VA loan if they're eligible, or how all of this is going to affect the rental market. If you guys want content like that, let me know in the comments and I'll start working on it. But for right now, here are my final thoughts on the matter. We don't get to decide how high mortgage rates are going to go. We don't get to decide how many houses are being built or being put on the market. We don't get to decide inflation. What we can control is our own credit score. And by having a good credit score, you can both lower your mortgage interest rate and qualify for a larger set of competitive mortgages. Focus on keeping your debts low and your payments flowing on time. If you can do that, then you'll have a lot more options. And if you plan on living in a house for a long time, don't worry about what happens to the housing market 6 months after you buy your house. If the price of comparables changes over the next 24 months after you move into a home, don't sweat it if the prices decrease. You have to live somewhere anyway. So yeah, you might not have gotten the home at the perfect time. If you just waited a little bit longer, maybe you could have gotten a slightly better price. But come on, don't split hairs on this thing. It really doesn't matter. What matters is how much your house is worth when you sell it. And short-term fluctuations in the real estate market matter even less than fluctuations in the S&P. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know if you enjoy this type of content and I'll approach the subject again. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.